This is Glambition Radio, episode number 200 with Amy Jo Martin, Renegade Entrepreneur. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Alli Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. My team and I just got back from Miami Beach. Ding, 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 ding. I love Miami Beach. It's just something about, it's got this rhythm to it. It's got this island vibe and all the ethnic foods, and it's just everything that Scottsdale, Arizona is not. So I think we enjoy the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. And now we're back in dry, homogenous Arizona. But man, what an amazing first meeting we had for our founding members of the Trust. This is our new network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. We had women in the room spanning revenues from $1 million all the way up to $50 million. We had a lot of diversity that naturally came, which I was excited about. We had incredible discussions in the room as well as at our cocktail event. Nothing made me happier than seeing these women continue to cluster and get into groups and give each other advice and just exchange resources. And I mean, by the time the 2 days was over, you could tell they just looked exhausted. They were spent. They had shared everything, they'd given everything, and they're already asking when the next event's going to be. And so it was fantastic. And I didn't even put on my swimsuit. Unfortunately, we were jammed with meetings, but it was a great time and we were missing the kids and it was time to come home. So hasta la vista, Miami Beach. This was just the beginning. And a reminder that if you or another female leader you know is craving more powerful connections, more elevated conversation, and a modern platform for connecting with other high-performing women globally, go to jointhetrust.org. That's where we have some more details, and you or your colleagues can request a brief informational interview. We're doing this very privately and very carefully. We want women who are at that level for these kinds of conversations and connections. And if you want to peek at some photos from our event, Instagram's the best place to go, probably my Alli Brown official at Instagram. Now, quick shout out to 2 great reviews we got on iTunes. Thank you so much for taking the time. That's why I want to take a moment and thank you for leaving these reviews. They really do help with our rankings. They help give other listeners confidence in trying the show. It helps get us more attention, and we're so grateful. The first is Sam D900 from Australia wrote, "If you want to see what you can be, listen to Glambition Radio and Alli. This podcast and Alli literally changed me and my business's trajectory. After listening for a while and hearing about Iconic the year before, last year after listening to the Cindy Eckert episode, I jumped on a plane and went from Australia to be in a room of amazing women. I remember you. And then I connected directly and indirectly in that room with women who are now part of my fierce team, supporting me with my disruptive vision. This podcast is the place to start. And I fully intend to be a founding member of the Australian arm of the Trust when it comes here." Sam Dean. Thank you, Sam. Thoughtful and innovative, 5 stars by Tanjack20 from the US. "This is the podcast that I wait for every week. It pushes the bound of my thinking. I never knew such amazing women existed before this show. I've listened to Alli for about 8 months now, and every episode I have to stop and take notes from the incredible women she brings on the show. So inspiring." You could read the rest of Sam's review at iTunes. Thank you so much. Now, we're talking about incredible women. Get ready. Amy Jo Martin is an innovation advocate. She's an author. She's a podcast host, and she's really a renegade entrepreneur. She says renegades really do write the rules. And we're not talking about breaking rules and running loose. She's talking about a unique approach to building a business. And you're going to hear how, she had to shut down one of her first companies and why. And that was a huge, huge decision that she made. It was monumental for her. And I'm so glad that she talks about that. And there's some really interesting things you're going to find entertaining because she was really on the forefront of social media. This gal taught Shaq how to tweet. Take this in, and you got to hear the whole story. But most importantly, I think you're going to just love who this woman is, everything she's been through, and who she has become, and especially with her new baby. Congrats again, Amy Jo. I know you're still in the thick of it. We're thinking of you. It's just going to give you a magical insight into things that we need to pay attention to in our businesses and our lives. So get ready for an insightful conversation with Amy Jo Martin. Amy Jo, where are you right now?
I am in my home studio in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which is about 15 minutes from Mount Rushmore, if anyone wants to know. I have my rainbow bright socks on, and I'm teetering on, I call it a mom pajama entrepreneur. A mom pajama entrepreneur today before I hop on. Yeah, I don't know but I'm doing that before I hop on a plane, head to Scottsdale soon.
Oh my gosh, you are coming down. That's fantastic. Keep us posted.
Absolutely.
So you had me on your show, which I have to say was one of the best conversations I've had in a long time. It was just very natural. We went the places I think we should have gone. Do you know what I mean? So many of these shows are superficial. Sometimes you get on, it's just very straight interview. And I'm like, well, this is quite accurate, but boring, you know? And your show is just such a refreshing conversation. And so today I get to flip it on you because it was funny during that, when you were interviewing me, there were still so many times I wanted to stop and like get your part of the story and hear where you came into that, you know, if you agreed or not and things like that. So I think it'd be best though, if we start back where you found yourself in a great place at the right time with the whole social media boom. And that's kind of how I know you as you came into the business world. Is that about right?
Yes. Well, prior to that, I worked in ad agency life, and that was a great place to learn the ropes and all the facets of marketing and business. But I'd say the real springboard was when social communication came on the scene, and I was working for the Phoenix Suns in the NBA. Started in the 05-06 season, and it was like, what are we doing with this stuff? I was the director of new media. It was so new that we didn't even know what to call it, which
so anything new
is hilarious.
They're like, this girl is going to figure it out. If it's new, give it to Amy Jo.
Yeah. And we just threw everything new in the bucket. It was like mobile marketing, Amy Jo. Email marketing was not new at that point, but we were still trying new things with it. Social media, anything new. Even podcasting back then. It's like, okay, just throw it over there. We don't know what to do with this. There are no rules yet.
And so you figured it out.
I just experimented, Alli. It was such a fun time because, I love the unknown, and I think it's fun to just go and try, and it's exciting. There's adrenaline that comes with innovating, and it's also scary, and there's a lot of adversity that just surrounded me quickly. So you have to get used to that. But it was fun. I was playing with a pretty large subject matter at the time in Shaquille O'Neal, and that was not my responsibility per se, my job responsibility and role. But I ended up in a situation where, I'm working there at the Phoenix Suns in the front office, and I get a phone call from basketball operations, which is odd. They have no reason for calling me. And they said, come down to the locker room right now. Shaq wants to learn how to tweet, and we don't know what that even means. Nobody in this building knows what that means. So you need to get down here and teach him. So yes, and it was so new. Everybody was rolling their eyes. The word Twitter just was silly as it was. And so I went down, and you weren't allowed to interface with the players. Like, you had to ask permission. So I 100% did not do that because I would have never gotten the green light. And I just asked forgiveness, and we started working together. He said, what do I say? What should I share? And I said, share the Shaquille behind the Shaq, that person behind the personality, because people can see what you're doing on TV. We see it all the time playing basketball, but they don't know the who and the why. And so we were off to the races, started experimenting, and I totally made up a campaign concept called Random Acts of Shackness. And we bridged the virtual world with the physical world. Yeah, it was like plain. It literally, but I had to do this in secret because I wasn't allowed and my hand was getting slapped. So it was, a 20-something-year-old, fairly junior still. I'm a director level, but I don't have a ton of authority. And this was good 12, 13, 14 years ago.
When you look back, don't you miss kind of the naivete of it all, the beginning of social?
Heck yeah. It was like Play-Doh, the wild, wild west. And you do whatever you wanted. And there were 11 people at Twitter in the corporate office when I'd call them up and be like, well, let's try this. So yeah, it was so fun to have a bit of a petri dish, and that instant feedback was so fueling because you could tell what worked. You could feel what was working in that energy, and you could also see the data behind it too. But there were no rules and there was no cap to the creativity.
Yeah, I feel like now it's just so heavy. Like everything I post, sometimes I'm like already like projecting in my mind, what will the response be? Did I say the right thing? Is this going to piss these people off? Like you overthink everything now, I think, when you post it. And I kind of missed the beginning of all it. We were just sharing and kind of happy and saying, isn't this great? And we can all connect. And wow, this could change the world. Like, yeah, it made it a really scary place is what it did. It's not that scary, but sometimes it is now, social and the landscape of social.
It really can be. It amplifies what already exists, right? So there's so much self-awareness that can happen within social because you're mirroring what, who you are, and the energy you bring into it is fascinating because it just gets amplified. If it's judgment of other people, or if it's feeling judged, or if it's not that social is good or bad, positive or negative, it's what we bring into it and then who we choose to surround ourselves with. But it really is a fascinating, like, social experiment to look at how you can learn a lot about yourself based on your behavior within social, because I truly believe you don't brand yourself, you are yourself. And that creates a brand. But in order to have a strong voice that resonates and connects, which ends up converting, you have to be you. And that is very difficult for us humans to peel back those layers and be true to ourselves, because that's an inside job, right? And we like the outside job. We like the data and what we can control is on the inside, not the outside.
Well, did you have this outlook back then when you started your agency, or is this over the years?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had. I mean, I definitely saw the magic in humanizing and how powerful that could be for the big brands, for the individuals, for your everyday mom and pop entrepreneur, really everybody. But I didn't realize how much of a slippery slope it could be for this persona and this brand to start to elbow out the real human, the real you. And so there's been a lot of learning over the last decade plus, but it was a wild ride. I mean, I started my first company, first time entrepreneur, 2009, and first client was Shaquille O'Neal, and then it was Hilton Worldwide, and then Nike and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And you start to get the powerful brands that are real icons looking to you on how to humanize and leverage the space, to harness the space. And it was, I kind of joke, I knew what I was doing because I had been experimenting and I had case studies, but there was also a portion that didn't know because nobody knew. Right? It's just you have to have a little bit of a knowledge edge, which I definitely had. And then I'm in my 20s as, an entrepreneur trying to hire quickly and grow.
Nothing to lose.
And
I miss those days.
Wild ride. Yes, wild ride.
Wild West. So did you get the idea to launch your agency because you were working with these players and other people were coming to you? Like, tell me about that leap, that when you decided to leave employment, though, to launch the agency, because that was a big step.
It was a big step. And I was not one of those people who grew up knowing they wanted to start their own company, be an entrepreneur. I had my sights set on other things, and that wasn't even in my mindset, but I did see the opportunity. And it was one of those things where I knew there was something extremely powerful here and that I had to follow this because I would always wonder if I hadn't. And the momentum was incredible. I mean, my presence was growing along with some of these celebrities I was working with because we were bantering publicly as well and doing these stunts in real time. And, people were writing articles about what we were doing because it was all so new. So here's my following now at over 1 million people just on Twitter. And I'm a girl from Wyoming who grew up in a trailer park. So this was all new to me to experience this type of a spotlight. And I saw that the brands that we were working with, the marketing partners at the Suns, they wanted to get closer to the affinity of the players, to the affinity of the team and that logo. And the big, traditional media assets like TV and in arena signage, they weren't as attractive to these big brands anymore. They wanted to try, to leverage social. And so I thought, well, what an opportunity, we can monetize this. And so it was this love of, even from when I was a little girl, I used to have a crush on Nike. I felt, like I had a true affinity to the logo, and I just loved marketing. And I thought, wow, this is where these brands can really come alive and have a personality. So yeah, it was, I really kind of just started without a huge plan, to be completely honest, and I'll figure it out along the way. But things were moving so fast. It didn't exist yet, this type of service and offering. And so it was a land grab. It was like, all right, we're going to do this.
How big did it get when this was just snowballing? And, you had a big team, you had a lot of clients, big name clients. Tell us about the pinnacle of it.
Yeah. So, hit 7 figures in year 2. And it was one of those things where, as a service-based entity and your economic model is really, your time, that becomes an interesting dynamic because you really are all about the people that work on the team. We had employees in 10 different countries there with one of the largest hospitality brands in the world in our portfolio that we were servicing. And it looked amazing from the outside looking in, and we were doing great technically. But what was really going on behind the scenes, here on the outside, I am sharing the story play by play of us working with the biggest movie star in the world and the biggest brands and helping them. And, the New York Times bestselling book comes out that I write, and it all sounds great. But behind the scenes, I was averaging 4 hours of sleep a night on 210 flights in 1 year. And my marriage was on the rocks. My team was not a big fan of mine because I was forcing things. We just had to keep going. And that adrenaline became a bit of an addiction because it was working. The results were there. And the story I was telling and the, recognition I was seeking started to trump the real story, how I was really feeling. And it's fascinating that I had zero ability to listen to my own intuition. Almost noise canceller is on when I think about it now, because it just, this was working. The revenue was through the roof. The numbers were all happening, so on and so forth. But behind the scenes, it was a completely different story.
Yeah, but you probably just thought at the time, well, this is what it takes. And it is supposed to be hard. And I'm supposed to feel like crap and supposed to suffer when it's that good, 100%. Right? It's hard. It's hard to turn that off. You just think, well, this is what it takes.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think, looking back at it, I like a good old pendulum swing. I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. Let's do a 180 at times, just kind of anything in life. And that's never the answer. But I am really grateful for, my ability to see the opportunity. And I know I can make things happen. I'm very good at that. Out of sheer will, I can force things. And what I learned is that there's also a path of a less resistance where you actually can tune in and realize, okay, when should I let things happen and when should I make them? And there isn't a right or wrong, one isn't right and one isn't wrong 100% of the time, but there is a rhythm here, and you need strategy and intuition, data on the outside and that internal data on the inside. And so that was missing a bit there, with the just go, go, go. I found myself.
You had investors too, right? Like Tony Hsieh, Baron Davis, the NBA player, invested. Does that feel like additional pressure on you as well when you're running a business and you have to show investors a return?
It was a really unique situation where I didn't feel that so much, but had it been different people, 100%. I had such a strong personal relationship there. But the investors, we didn't need the money. What the strategy in terms of building the agency side of the business, the strategy was I went to Tony at one point and I was like, I've got to figure out a different model here. I've built the company too much around me. People wanted me in the meetings. When you have those high level individuals, even though my team members, they were amazing. They knew more than me on boots on the ground level. And so I was trying to really figure out how to productize my intellectual property. And so we were going to build out an online university. This was before online classes were a thing, right? Like this was before you even had the platforms. We had to build our own LMS. And so that's what we were focused on. And as soon as I brought the investors on, the agency side of the business just started to grow even quicker. It was the alignment on my end as the founder, CEO, who's also the author and out speaking and doing way too many things. But it was, we were off balance. And it was also an interesting time of, looking at the culture that we had established at my company, and then it would clash with the corporate culture oftentimes that we'd go into. There was such it seemed to be a motivation by fear. When you're working with some of these big brands, people are operating out of fear. And so there was a lot going on there. And it was a time of a massive personal growth through, some humbling experiences as well. I found myself at the JFK airport one day and I'm looking at the departure board and I couldn't remember where I was and I couldn't remember where I was going, which was pretty normal. And then I kind of figure it out and I go over to fuel up, get some coffee at Starbucks. And as I'm signing that receipt, I completely went blank and I forgot my name. And it was one of the most impactful moments of my life, Alli, because I literally forgot my own name. And I walked over and I sat down and I realized I am an emotionally and physically bankrupt millionaire. There has to be another way. There has to be another way. It appears that we're doing it and we did it, but that hustle, grind, chase, sleep when you die mentality, it doesn't work. And I get so frustrated when I hear that romanticized because yes, you have to put in the hard yards, but if you aren't listening to that GPS you have inside of you and you have noise cancelers on, you're headed for disaster because you can't sustain that. And so that is my passion now, is helping women really find that alignment in both sides. And it was a tough road. It was a humbling season when you're living so publicly.
When I was on your show, I believe I shared the story of when I decided to dismantle a lot of what I had created. And, I know at the time for me, I knew it was not going to be easy to dismantle kind of the machine that I had built. So how did you even approach this? And did it feel selfish? Like I remember feeling very selfish about that decision at first. I just want to hear all about your decisions and how they felt and how you did decide to exit this or blow it up or whatever happened to it.
Yeah. Well, we had been in discussions about acquisition several times and it just felt too early usually. And that's a whole long road of due diligence and it takes so much energy. And then there was another, conversation that we found ourselves in where we were being courted and it was a big brand. And, I've got Tony Hsieh as my mentor, investor, advisor, who's done a pretty decent job at exiting to Amazon for billions of dollars. And so we're navigating this conversation, but it was extremely difficult to hand over clients that have, the types of clients that we had, in terms of, there would have been a 5+ year earn out where I had to stay on board, and I didn't have it in me anymore. Alli, I literally it's me or the company. And looking back now, I realized I truly believe I saved my life by exiting. And that sounds so dramatic when I hear it myself, but it's true. And I had gotten myself down to a dark road, and I've created it, 100% responsibility. But yes, it was the most difficult decision I ever had to make. I mean, fortunately, we were profitable from day one. So I was able to literally hand the investors their money back and still make money. But the employees, the team, we were family. So that was the most difficult conversation I've ever had, is to explain this to the team. And I gave them as long of a runway as possible. And we helped each other find the next gig. And luckily, I have an amazing network, and we had all these brands we were working with. A lot of them went to the brand side.
Yeah. What did you say during that, though? I wanted to back up one sec. Just like, what were those conversations like? What did you even say? Because I remember that being a bit agonizing for me. Like, how do I even describe what I'm feeling and where I want to go? Because they may not even understand. And you tell me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is like, brings back physiologically memories. Like, my body is remembering exactly what it felt like. So I'm sitting in our big conference room and call everyone in. And I think they sensed it. They knew. I don't think it was a shock in terms of where we were and the reality of the alignment that was missing, but how we dealt with it and what, my solution was probably definitely a shock. So it was a lot about alignment. And I mean, in full disclosure, it got to a point with one of our biggest clients where I let them go. And I knew, and I had really kind of mapped out the numbers as well. And I knew that was going to be a pretty huge hit to our revenue, right? Huge, like salaries. And the reason I let them go was because we were so out of alignment from a cultural standpoint, business, like our company cultures, that I was getting ready to lose my star employees, because they were not being treated well. And it was just not a good fit. Yet that was a huge amount of revenue. So I was in this, like, I'm going to lose them anyway. And that's not cool. These are the people I love and care about. And so the conversation was tough, but it was, it's a heart-based convo, and explaining what's about to happen, of, where we were. And it was tough. Well, there was a ton of emotions. We were so tight. So studying kind of under the Tony Hsieh company culture model, we had a tight family there. Which is a whole nother ball game, right? Like, it's great, but it's also tough when you're the leader and you are running a business, because those relationships are so strong. So, it was almost like a Hallmark movie after this. I mean, everybody was almost grieving the situation, and the support for one another was incredible. I mean, we're talking like family here. So, there was confusion, and so I had a lot of discussions with people, a lot of one-on-ones, and I was, it came to the point to where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and running on 4 hours of sleep, and trying to find trying to find a solution. But I had tried a lot of different things. Right. And so it was, those were tough conversations, but
you made the decision. Like, you walked in that room and it was a done deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There was no wavering. And I knew, exactly how this was going to go down. At least I had a plan, and it took a long time, because you've got millions and millions of dollars in billing and contracts. And so, I'm really grateful for the team. I had a core team that helped us see through or see our responsibilities through. And yeah, talk about I call it a wind up because, technically we were profitable, and there's a wind down when you basically go out of business. And that wasn't the case. Maybe it's just my ego that likes that. My goal is to help other people not get in that situation. And so, I feel like we live everything. There's a reason, and that's to share what you've learned. So others can leapfrog your mistakes, learn from you, accelerate their process of learning. And that's, those are some hard lessons. And I'm grateful though. I think it saved my life, but it also has opened up an opportunity for me to live in alignment and experience even more real success.
Yeah. Talk about what happened after that. Did you run away to, I picture you going to India or riding elephants or a Eat, Pray, Love kind of thing? What did you do? Or was it wasn't that romantic of a departure and time off? Or did you panic? What was the once you really wrapped it up and then closed that last set of books, who did you become? What happened?
It took a good 7-8 months plus, really a year to wind up with the books and the real, everything. So it was like a long ass funeral is what it felt like. You're wanting to move on and move forward, but here you feel terrible that it's perceived as a failure, and you've got all these employees that you're trying to watch out for and find their next gig for them, help them find their next gig. And so I had my now husband and I, we moved to San Diego onto our boat. We had a boat there just kind of that we'd go to on the weekends, and literally put everything in storage, moved onto a boat. And I learned to sleep again. I learned to captain. I learned to meditate and just kind of take stock, really, what the heck just happened and how do I avoid that from happening again? And so I started talking to a lot of people I respect, and it's like, okay, we're going to do a little audit here. And I started my own podcast just out of having these conversations and wishing they had been recorded so other people could learn from the people I was speaking with.
Oh, that's how it started.
Yeah, the guests. I started on the boat, with the tiny microphone. We had pillows around me, so the echo wouldn't really.
It was probably good sound.
It depends. The waves crash on the boat constantly, so it's an audio engineer's nightmare, actually. But I'm in a nice home studio right now, so this is much better. But it was a lesson in simplicity. I had been seeking external validation all my life. The results, the titles, the accolades, the numbers, the money, the spotlight. And I kept winding up empty. And it was like, okay, if you're going to give this another go, life, then you better get some stuff straight and figure out what just happened. But yeah, a lot of it came down to not listening to that inner voice. The signs were there, the big red flashing U-turn signs. And I was like, no, we're going. I'll make this happen. We can do it.
So the show really is what kind of delivered you to the next chapter.
Yes. And it was amazing. It was an innocent passion project that turned into the career love of my life. I mean, being able to interview all these people, these renegades that I had been learning from, Mark Cuban, Simon Sinek, Tony Robbins, all these people that I started to realize there were some trends and themes on how they navigate from idea to action, how they get stuff done, but still stay in relative alignment. And, it was a passion project that then all of a sudden I'm having advertisers, and I'm like, okay. And along the way, I had been doing public speaking professionally for the last, since 2007 or 8, probably 2008. So that was a source of revenue as well. And given that I cashed out and wound up the company, I wasn't scrambling, but I also knew, I want to figure out what I want to do next. And a lot of people would call up and say, help can you come and consult with us? It's some great fancy brands and logos would call. And I had zero interest to get back into that game, even just me as an individual. But what I did keep having pop up was women, female entrepreneurs, women leaders. They were trying to, reach out and ask if I'd help them with figuring out their message, how to build their company using digital and growing their brand. And it was a passion, just to help them and mentor. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll start doing this in a different setting, in a different infrastructure. And I experimented a couple years ago and started the Renegade Brand Bootcamp, where I do this in a group setting. And it's a 3-month intensive, and I didn't even know if I would like it. I love it. It's exactly where I'm supposed to be. It's meshing everything I've learned, as well as what I have credentials in, as well as what I have, life credentials and business experience in. So it's been pretty amazing.
And I can't let this interview go by without you talking about Lincoln, your baby. Is he baby still? He is. He's very much
9
a baby,
months.
right?
Yes, definitely a baby.
Wow. Tell us a bit about, that journey. I know it's a long story, but like if you could share with the listeners, because it's a really big part of who you've become. And your Aussie husband, you're married to an Aussie as well.
Yes, I am.
And what's that journey been like? Because that's an adventure in itself, by the way, to all of you women. But if you're bored with Americans, try an import.
We actually met in Australia. I was speaking at a conference, and here we are, fast forward, and somehow I got an Australian who surfs to South Dakota, and I don't know how that happened, but it's a miracle. Thank you for asking about Lincoln.
You've trapped him in the woods, like
I taught him to snowboard, and that's kind of similar, I guess, but he's such a trooper as it's snowing outside right now. Lincoln, my son, so I was 6 months pregnant, and I was, I travel a ton for work and speaking, and I was on a flight up in Canada, which I think actually was the catalyst for this. And then the next week I was headed somewhere else, and I had a layover in Denver, and I thought I just had some Braxton Hicks false labor, and turns out, no, I was in full labor, and I had my son at 27 weeks, almost in a Denver airport. And he was 2 pounds when he was born. We have no idea what caused
Wow. Just to put that in perspective for everybody, that's less than like a rotisserie chicken, right? Like that's like tiny.
It is.
Just for anyone who doesn't understand babies, like that's so small and not likely to survive in many situations.
Yeah.
Right?
It's amazing really looking at the healthcare and that whole world was eye-opening. But yes, he spent 3 months in the NICU in Denver. We relocated to Denver. Life was just flipped upside down, and he thrived though. He really, there were tough days, man, really tough days. But we have this saying around our house, and it's up and to the right. I'm a big spreadsheet gal, and I love a spreadsheet. So if we can chart and track his data day by day, you would see the graph, and it was up and to the right. So he's doing so well now. He's off of oxygen, and you would never know. You actually would never know. He's the happiest little boy. He is just reached the normal kid growth curve. So he's not even considered a preemie growth curve anymore. That's pretty great, coming from a 2-pounder who.
Yeah. How big is he now?
He's, last weigh-in was about 3 weeks ago, and that was 16 pounds, but I swear he's probably 18 now. His little chubby cheeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you bring him when you travel, or do you leave him there with your, with your folks?
Not yet. He can't travel yet just because he's so susceptible to, virus and RSV, and airplanes and airports just are not the most conducive. So he stays back with dad or grandma. And it's been just when people say it takes a village, I kind of knew what they meant. But then when you have a kid, you're like, oh, I get it. Right. So as a mom who's on the road a lot and very business focused, it's amazing how, that love and support comes in and allows you to still do what you do, but try and keep it, in check.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful news. And we love keeping up with you and Lincoln on social. So what's next for you before we wrap up? What should we be looking for? Have you reached a happy place and everything's rocking with the brand boot camp, with the show? You're in a good place, or are you percolating on something else?
I'm always percolating, but it's focused percolation, I guess you would say. Just really focused on working with female entrepreneurs and helping them figure out their message, grow their business. It's really, everything is in that swim lane. That's where everything has come into full alignment. And so that's where we're headed, and just being a mom too and enjoying every second.
Yeah. You're in the middle of it. Like, that's an age you want to be there as much as you can. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. It's a special time for sure. We've got a little miracle boy on our hands. So I want to enjoy every moment.
So everyone listening can go to amyjomartin.com. They also should pick up your book, right? Renegades Write the Rules.
Correct. That's the book. Renegade Brand Boot Camp.
Okay. Didn't know if you forgot that for a minute.
Nope. Renegades Write the Rules. It is true. And then they rewrite them and rewrite them.
Just checking. Okay. I think your next one is Rewrite the Rules over and over. That's your next book, So let's talk about, actually. Yeah. To wrap up, Amy Jo, can you share 3 pieces of advice for everyone listening from, everything that you've done, everything that you've become in the process?
Absolutely. So number 1, which was my hard lesson on my end, is really focusing on both the linear and nonlinear aspects of business. And when I say that, I really mean that strategy and that outside data, as well as that intuition and the inside data. The wisdom's in the middle. The magic and the gold is the combo of those two. Number 2, I have a cheesy saying that's so true, that where purpose, passion, and skill collide, bliss resides. So if you can imagine a Venn diagram of those 3 things, purpose, passion, and skill, that sweet spot, whether you want to call it your zone of genius, what you are uniquely qualified to do is in the middle of that. And so it is worth that discovery process of finding it, because that's when work doesn't feel like work. It truly, to me, I'm in a zone of playing each day, and it's amazing. I also get sleep, and business is good. So that's a sweet spot there. And then 3, I think we get so caught up on people wanting to brand themselves and this concept of personal branding. And as humans, we don't brand ourselves. We are ourselves. And that creates the brand. So the real work is showing up as you, being unapologetically true to yourself, because that's when your tribe will find you. That's when your customers, your clients, your following will find you. And that creates connection. Connection converts. Connection will lead to revenue, will lead to business, will lead to impact. So really focusing on letting go of that facade of what you think a brand might look like for yourself, and just being yourself and doing the work. That's, it shouldn't be a big secret, but it seems like if you're scrolling through Instagram or Twitter these days, it feels like, that might be something we've forgotten.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you. Thank you so much for your just opening up, because I think these are the stories that we need to tell more often, and they're incredibly personal. Like building something like you did and taking the chance to do that. And it was working. But then deciding that, no, I need something different. I want to do something differently, and I'm going to go do that. And then, that opened up room to have this beautiful marriage and your baby and start this show that's leading you to a whole new place. So it's just such a pleasure to get to know you, and we'll be following along on your show.
I appreciate the time, Alli, and also I appreciate you going to those places and having those conversations about, the things that we've learned, and sometimes tough conversations, because that's what it's all about.
It is a lot. I'd say that's a good point. 60% of this is having conversations that may be uncomfortable, I'd say, when you look at a lot of success.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And I'm much more inspired by hearing about someone's comeback story or what they've been through, versus some big rattling off of the success, lineup. So
linear success is incredibly boring.
It is. It's so predictable.
It's a good thing you and I are so interesting. All right. Thanks, Amy Jo.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you, Alli.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to allibrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.